Welcome to the Pennywise Financial Podcast. This is Constantine here at Monarch Wealth Management, and today I have a guest. Guest is Holly Crocker from Oasis Senior Advisors. Welcome to the show, Holly.
Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks so much. It's a nice, beautiful fall day, and we were just talking about the leaves falling, changing colors, and I actually appreciate this time of year.
Me too.
So I'd love to have Holly introduce herself and tell us a little bit more about your background and who you help.
So my background is actually occupational therapy. I'm a certified and licensed occupational therapy assistant, and I'm also a certified fall prevention specialist. I worked in skilled rehab for about 5 years, a couple different places, and got injured on the job. So it was
You did?
Mm-hmm.
Did not know that.
Yep, I was transferring a client, and they tried to sit when I was transferring them, and it threw two of my discs out because I grabbed them with a gait belt.
Oh, no.
And so it's hard for me to lift more than 25 pounds now. So I wanted to find something where I could still do what I love and incorporate it into. I went to home care for about a year, worked for home instead, and then now I work for Oasis. When I was in skilled rehab, I had the clients where either they weren't medically cleared to go home because it was an unsafe environment, but then they would ask me, where do I go? And
It's a great question, right?
Yep. And I had no idea. I didn't know anything about assisted living, independent living, memory care, anything about them. Just know that that would be considered 24/7 care. So now I got into the field where I can take them from rehab or say they're not safe to be at home from a home care agency calls me and says it's time to move to the next step. I can walk them through the process of finding the right community to go to.
So how does that actually work?
Mhm.
Are they being, in a sense, kicked out of where they are? I mean, I hate to put it that way, but
No, that's actually what I get from clients. They'll call me and say, well, insurance cut. So in 48 hours, where do I go? Like, what happens to my loved one? They can stay after rehab cuts them, but it would be a significant amount per day. It could be
that
2
they would
weeks.
have to pay for out of pocket? Oh,
Correct.
okay.
And therapy would end. But it's also when therapy does cut them, they can appeal it. So they'll get a cut notice saying, they say you've reached your maximum potential, and therapy is recommending you either go home with 24/7 care, which can be extremely expensive,
I'm sure.
or go to a community for 24 hours a day. And they can appeal to extend the therapy, and sometimes they win. It goes through a third party. So they will either agree that no, we agree the insurance was right to cut you at this time. We think you've reached your maximum potential, or we feel let's give you a couple more days to keep going to improve,
Well,
and then they can stay longer.
so who makes that decision? Is that the insurance company or is it a
Mhm.
combination?
It's a third party insurance company usually.
Okay.
So there's like, say, their main insurance company and then the client. The insurance company will tell this third party, nope, they're ready to be cut. And the client says, no, I'm not. And that third party will decide whether they can stay or not for a little bit longer.
So how is the who's notified? Is it the patient? Is it the caregiver? Is it a healthcare proxy? Who usually gets the notice, I
It
guess?
could be all of them.
Okay.
Depends. I have clients where they don't have family in town and they're the only ones that will get the notice.
It's got to be
the
tough.
social worker. It is. And that's where I'll get the phone call as they're referred to me as to what are my next steps. They can't get to the communities to see them. They can't get the paperwork from the communities to fill out applications. So I'm basically their eyes and ears. And a lot of them, my clients would have dexterity issues. So I help fill out the applications.
I didn't even think about that.
Just the smallest
Wow.
things. And it's also, I work with the OT, PT, and social work team. Where do they stand right now? Do they need help with toileting, bathing, even eating? Are they on a puree diet? Do they need help with diabetes management? Are they on oxygen? I know everything about each community, so I will be able to tell them this is what this community offers and would be able to fit your needs.
Who do you like, who is your main client base? Like, who are you
Mhm.
helping the most? Is it the aging population? Is it just random accidents where people find themselves now permanently disabled
Mhm.
and transitioning from? I don't know. I'm just curious.
I've had both. My youngest client was 50.
Oh, that's tough.
Was just had a lot of early onset things. And I actually, at that point, had to reach out to communities because I knew most of them were 55 plus. And I said, are you able to take someone that's 50? So my eldest was 107.
No kidding.
Yeah. So I always say I get the pre-planners or the post-planners, where no one likes to think about aging. No one wants to think someday I'm going to have to go to assisted living or memory care. My parents won't even let me tour with them because they don't want to think about it. But you get the people that are saying, eventually I am going to need to go somewhere. Let's tour now and look at all the communities that I would prefer. And sometimes they have wait lists. Let's get on the wait list now. And if something were to happen, they end up in rehab and they're told they can't go home, they already know where they want to go.
So what happens in that case where there is, let's say there's a 6 month or 1 year wait list? What happens in the interim?
Good question. So with, say they're coming out of rehab and they do get cut. I have a couple clients right now, their communities are 2 to 3 month wait list. So we need to find a community that has an opening that still fits their needs. And the things with their needs are also geographic region, that they want to be the right place where near their family, financially, and also, do they need the enhanced services, or do they need just regular like medication management, standby safety assist with showering, or do they need someone to physically help transfer them and more hands-on assistance with things? Those are the main things we're going to look for when looking for a community. It just varies a lot.
I can't imagine being in that position, especially being alone. But even with a loved one, say it's me and I look down the road and I see 75-year-old Constantine in a hospital bed or whatever it might be, and my wife sitting across from me, and we're making decisions. And I actually have a client that I'm thinking of, and I'll bring up this story and share that. But all these decisions on top of medical choices that you're making, and then this gets thrown your way, and it sounds like they don't have a very long period of time. Like you said, they're not getting quote unquote kicked out, but it's limited time. You've exhausted the benefits, and now it's time to make a choice on where to go afterwards. How do you help families cope with that and make those decisions in such a short period of time?
I'll actually give you a story too that I was just thinking of too. I try very hard to make my goal the client's goal. Whatever their goal is my goal. So eventually, maybe they're not ready right now to go home. They still need to be in a 24/7 care, but let's try going there and then see if we can keep doing rehab while in a community, get stronger, and try and get home. So I'm not coming in saying, "Oh, you need 24/7 care. You're never going to go home. This is what you need." I never tell them what they need. I ask them what they want and what they need. So I'm trying to be on their side, because it's devastating when you're told you cannot go home.
It's got to be terrible.
You can, but it's against medical advice. But you still want to get the OT and PT to continue with you when you go home. So I'm trying to, a lot of time, honestly, I feel like a therapist. I have clients cry with me. I have families cry with me. Or I have a brother and sister wanting different things for their mom. So we have to balance that out. I'll talk to them separate, have a meeting maybe with the social worker, do the care plan meeting with the whole team so we can figure out a plan together. But ultimately, I'm working for the client and what they want.
That makes sense. I almost feel like the more people involved, the harder it becomes, because like you say, everybody's got their own opinion. When we try to plan things in groups, and when I say groups, I mean when you get more than 4 or 5 people involved, you got brothers, sisters, and especially a situation like that, you're pressed against time, and you're thinking about health, and there's a lot of emotional things going on, I'm sure, inside people's head, and when it comes to family, it's tough. We talked before the show started about some of your past experiences and some things that people see as either doctors, but if you're there with a family member and it's real, you might react in a different way. So you almost are kind of like a liaison to help the family come together.
Yes.
And make. So you really have to understand what their goals are and get there so that you can advocate then for them at that point.
Correct. So I can read the medical chart and the OT and PT notes, and I know all the medical jargon.
You'll know it all.
Yep.
Wow.
But there's also other sides where I mentioned to you, one client, it was so important for him that he had eggs every morning.
Oh yeah, I love eggs for breakfast. Who doesn't?
So I had to call all the assisted living communities. Do you have eggs, and what kind of eggs do you have? And people are attached to their pets. Can they bring their pet
Oh,
in?
that's a big one.
And I've had many. Can I have a cocktail at dinner time? I had one social worker call me and she said, my client's looking for home care because she will not go to enhanced assisted living. Absolutely not. 100% refuses. Okay. The daughter called me in a panic because she didn't think her mom was safe to go home. And her mom was fighting her. So I said, would you mind if I came and just met with mom, have you there? They brought their cousin in as well. And I just listened to the client about what's really going on. Why do you think you can't go to assisted living or you don't want to? And she said, everyone's telling me what I need and they're not listening to me. I said, let me hear what you need and what you want. And she ended up going to enhanced assisted living.
Oh, wow. That's great that you can be in there. And sometimes that separation too, because you're not part of the family, you don't have all these other, I guess, ideas in your head to conflict with other people. They're not going to look at Holly and say, oh, geez, she just wants this because of X, Y, Z.
Yes. Well, and I also have many clients with dementia. And I come in and meet with the family. And with my OT background, I'm very used to working with people with cognitive TB, traumatic brain injuries, so cognitive issues, dementia, depending on which stage. And when I'm walked out by the family member, they're like, they're breathing. They're like, how do you do it? You're just so calm with them. You're so just upbeat. I'm like, they're not my family member. I'm not with them 24 hours a day. It's easier for me. So yes, I can come in with that. I'm like, you're doing the best you can with what you have.
That separation's got to be huge. There's a reason that doctors can operate on their own family members or on themselves, right? And I think sometimes in our practice too, on the financial side, not to switch gears too much, but we do it all the time. We consult with each other as colleagues, as peers, and try to formulate maybe a plan and discuss it, the details, and how we might approach it in a different way. So that's great. With that, I want to take a quick pause, and I want to ask you in the next segment a little bit more about the process and how people find you. We'll learn more in just a minute. Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back with the show. Do you want help building and managing an investment portfolio that's right for you? One that will help you maximize growth potential while you're saving, help you generate income when you need it most, and eventually preserve what you've saved to leave to your beneficiaries? We do this day in and day out and take the stress and responsibility of making those decisions off your plate. Subscribe to our newsletter, read our blog post, and listen to our podcast to get a flavor of how we do things. Our firm is unique and capable of handling all your investment and insurance needs. Monarch Wealth Management, our guidance, your future. Welcome back to the Pennywise Financial Podcast. Constantine here with my guest, Holly Crocker from Oasis Senior Advisors. Welcome back to the show, everyone. So we learned a little bit about what you do and how you help your client base. What I am curious about is the actual process. So how do people find you? Do you get like a phone call? Are you part of a list of services that people recommend when they're transitioning services? Like, how does that actually work?
So when I started, I went out and tried to network with all different types of people. For instance, financial planners, financial advisors, elder law attorneys, home care agencies, and a lot of it is social work because I get a lot of phone calls from the rehab. I will say the majority I get are from the rehab and the home care agencies where, hey, my client, they're approaching that stage or they're at that stage that they no longer can stay at home or they can't go home. So usually it's a phone call, either from a family member or the client themselves, depending on if they're able to. It can be very challenging when I get 5 family members calling me. And they all want different times to meet. And I ask them, do you want me to meet together? Do you want me to meet separate? Do you want me to meet with the client originally? Or do you want to meet prior and then we meet with the client? But I do like to involve the client because ultimately it's about them.
Of course.
Yep. If it's a phone call from rehab, I get a lot from social workers, or they give my card out to them for the family to reach out. And when they do, we I can even meet with the social worker and care plan team meeting in rehab. So, like the OT team, PT, social work, even dietary come in. Where do we stand right now? And where do we think we're going to get to by the time insurance cuts? So, let's at least know our options. Say if a week from now we think insurance is going to cut, let's know the places they want to go to if they can't go home. So, let's start touring now.
So do you actually have notice well in advance of that 48 hours? Like you have
Sometimes,
an
yeah.
idea of when it might be. It might be, hey, we're 3 weeks away or
Mhm.
we're a week away.
I have one client right now. I was given 2 weeks.
Okay.
He just got to rehab, and the family was actually proactive. They're like, I don't know if he can come home.
Right.
And it's also devastating for the spouse because you spent 50 years with your loved one, and all of a sudden you might have to live separate. It's very challenging.
It's a big change.
It is. So we need to find a place where it's a 1 or 2 bedroom where you can be together, or an independent living is attached to an assisted living. So you can still be in separate rooms and need different assistance, but still be together. Um, so we all meet, and then what I do is, like I said before, the geographic region, what is our financial situation, and then also where is our status. And I'd like to educate people on assisted living and enhanced assisted living, and same with memory care and enhanced memory care.
Talk more about that.
So with assisted living, they can do some hands-on assistance with activities of daily living, so like bathing, toileting, dressing, medication management. They do housekeeping, provide meals. If we need the enhanced service, they can help with transfers. I know some places that can even use an Apex machine to help, sit to stand and transfer from one chair to the bed or a different device, or a different seating area, or a two-person assist. How many people does it take to transfer this person? They can help with injections for diabetes, or if they just had oral medication for diabetics, then they would just be under the regular assisted living because they can handle the oral medications. Do they need oxygen management? Are they able to know? I had one client where when he was seated, he was on 4 liters. Well, when he stood up, he needed to go to 8 liters, and someone needed to manage that for him.
Hmm.
So someone has to be right there with him when he's ready to. So he has to push a button saying, I'm ready to go to the bathroom. I need assistance. And then it's also with toilet hygiene. Do they have the range of motion after shoulder surgery to be able to
That's a good
take good
point.
care of themselves? Can they sit up from supine to sit in bed? All these small things that I think we all take for granted every day. If I
Absolutely.
have to go to the bathroom, I get up and go to the bathroom. I get dressed in the morning, I shower. But it's the places where I have some clients that need a lot of hands-on assistance with showering. They need transfers into the shower and then someone physically washing them. That's the enhanced services where they do a lot more hands-on.
There's a lot of decision making in this and a lot of things to think about that you mentioned that I wouldn't even think of.
Mhm.
How does that first meeting work? Is it usually like an hour of discovery or is it a couple hours? I have no idea. It's so much to cover.
Yes.
How do you get through it?
I tend to have the first half an hour to an hour be a listening session. So, what are we looking for? Where do we stand? The family will tell me what's going on. This is the past. This is what's happened at home. This is where we feel like we need to go. And then I'm going to kick in my expertise and say, these are the options we have. And then once sometimes I'll even meet with them and then they don't call me back for 3 months because they weren't ready, but they want to know their options. When they do, I will send them. I have a computer system, Oasis IQ, that I can put all their ADLs in, geographic, financials, and it will bring up all the communities in the area they want to be in, and I can send it to them to look at. So take a peek at the communities I sent and tell me which ones you want to tour. I set up the tours. I go on tours with them.
Wow.
I send them a 4-page paper prior, and it is tips for touring. So things to look for. Memory care, it's huge with stimulation. They need to be constantly stimulated. I have a client right now that she goes home and she sweeps the rug every day because she doesn't have the stimulation.
Oh,
Yep. And with the tips of touring, look at the activities calendar. What are they constantly doing something? When you're there, are they engaged in something? Or is it a fitness video on the TV and everyone in memory care sleeping watching the fitness video? things to look for. How's the interaction between staff and residents? Are they interactive, or are some people in the corner on their cell phones?
Yeah. Going
But
through the
Mhm.
motions, punching in, punching out.
One thing I love to see, was at one community, and the client had ice cream in the hand, and so did the the aide, and the woman in the wheelchair dropped hers on the ground, and so the aide said, "Oh, here, I haven't had mine yet. You can have mine." Like, those things touch your heart.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All those little things that mean so much.
And
How many?
and cleanliness too. Are things
Oh,
swept
yeah.
in the corner? Or are they actually
Yes.
clean? So those I tell people to look for. We go on tours, and then, are we ready to fill out paperwork? Do you want me to sit down with you and fill out the paperwork? I offer. I don't like to overstep, and they tell me what they need.
I want to back up for just a minute because
Sure.
I maybe have failed to ask this. We talked about the first step in the first meeting, but before that, but is there a cost? How are you compensated? I mean, obviously, is there like an engagement agreement? Like what happens
So I'll get anyone that works with me. It's free, 100%.
from
So
start to finish?
start to finish.
Wow. Okay.
So I have clients that my last client was his budget was 2.5 million. I have a client right now, his budget's 40,000. It just varies.
It's a big gap.
Yep. And I know the communities that they would be able to afford, and depending on their care level. Um, whichever they could, I think there's only a handful of communities I don't have a contract with, but all the other communities I get reimbursed by them, whichever
Okay.
one my client chooses. I don't give my opinion on on a community, because I'm gonna love this one community because they have bingo every day, and I
Right.
love bingo. But my client's gonna hate it because they have bingo every day. So I'm like, okay, it's like, steak versus chicken. So I don't give my opinion, but even the communities I don't have a contract with, I'm still gonna go to tours with them and show them, because if it's the right one for them, that's all that matters to me. And then I like my name to be out there so people know how I was able to help them.
Wow. So I didn't realize that. So there's no charge. There's no commitment from a client to say, geez,
Nope.
I have to think about this before I sign.
Mhm.
So there's no contract at all?
The only thing they get is when I do send them the communities for them to look at, it's just an e-signature saying that they're working with me,
I see.
and that's it.
That makes sense.
Yep.
So from start to and then where does the relationship stop when they're find their final placement? Like what happens after that?
I get that question a lot from families. They're like, "So are you just done once
Yeah,
they're placed?" And I'm
yeah,
like,
that's what I'm thinking. I don't know. That's a bad way of putting it, but
it is, but that's how it gets phrased to me. And with my heart, I can't just place someone somewhere and not check in. I usually check in like 2 or 3 days in. I get settled. How are things going once they move in? I'll check in a week later, and then 3 weeks later, and then maybe a month or 2 after. And I always tell the family, I am still here. Even though you're already placed, I'm still here for questions. Or I say, you don't know if you like a community until you really move in. You have no idea.
well, I was going to ask this too. Say somebody makes a choice
Mhm.
and they think it's okay, and maybe after a couple of months, they say, you know what, Holly, this I thought I would like this, but the bingo night is just really exhausting me, and I don't like the food choice. Their eggs are not what
Yes.
I wanted. Do people change?
Call me.
Okay, so they
100%.
could still reach you, and you
Yes.
would help them.
Yep.
Oh, that's great.
I can continue to work with them. And I've gotten a couple phone calls like that. Or there are some communities that are just assisted living. And now all of a sudden they need the more hands on care and help with transfers or diabetic management. So now we need to find a different community.
Oh, so above and beyond just I don't like this. I just
Yes.
maybe need
Higher
some
level.
additional. Yes.
Yep.
Okay. That's good to know.
Mhm.
I'm thinking about a client, a story that I wanted to share with you. I'm sure you might go through this, but um, I have a somewhat younger couple that was kind of approaching retirement in one of this case, and the wife develops the onset of dementia, and things start to progress pretty rapidly, and it's now to the point where um, they can't leave her alone. And I think it's wearing pretty thin on the husband trying to do everything, and it's uncomfortable. But This is a man who's now 65 and says, this is the love of my life, my wife and the mother of my children. And the kids are, kind of all about the country, live in different parts of the country. So no one's local to help, but how much help is really there. And at some point, the family is sharing stories with me and they're telling me Dad's going to have to put her in a place. And that's the way they word it. And he's like, no, gosh darn it, this is not going to happen to my wife, but she can't, she cannot function. And that person is no longer there. There's no dialogue between the two of them. There's no conversation. She doesn't know who anybody is. That's got to be tough do you have a lot of clients that go through that? How do they move on and maybe accept the fact that they're not able to even care for them? Running to the store could be a fire hazard.
Yes.
And I had that happen.
Yep. So I will get where the spouse is no longer a spouse, they're a caretaker. And I ask them, what's your goal? What do you want for you and your loved one? People always ask me too, how do I know when it's time that I can't do this anymore? I can't keep taking care of my loved one like this. I say, you will know the time and you will call me. You will reach a point. And that's where some people try and look for a memory care that is right near their house so they can go all day and be with them if they wanted. Or they have a community where they could be an independent, but it's also attached to a memory care. So they could still be together, just separate rooms. But many people get to the point where they want to become a spouse again. And family members do come back and they see how much mom has changed and what it's doing to dad. And dad doesn't have a social life. He can't even go to the store. And she could wander. It could be a complete safety hazard. And they're like, Dad, you should get back to having a life as well.
And that's what I'm thinking about, being younger and not quite that close to retirement just yet. But, for myself and my wife, what would you say is some advice to some families that are, far from that ever happening,
Yep.
maybe to start the planning the dialogue now today and saying, hey, look, if this happens, I think about my own scenario and my wife. I wouldn't want my wife to sacrifice her life, especially if I'm no longer the same person. Now you're sacrificing two lives, really,
Yes.
because I'm just there breathing and going through the motions, but I don't have any real dialogue with my wife any longer, with my family. I don't know who they are. What kind of advice would you give?
So I'll say it this way. I have usually elderly clients. The family members always are saying, we knew this day would come, but we never prepared for it. We never really thought it would come. So they actually don't know companies like mine exist.
I know.
That
Most
I can
people
help
would
them
not.
through
I
the
didn't know.
process. But then it gets them thinking like, hey, I'm 55, almost 60. What if, my loved one gets early onset dementia? Do I know where I want them to go? Or what are my options? So it gets them thinking, maybe I should start planning for me. And I say, going on tours is free. Can't go hurt to look at a community and get your name there. I've had, when I was in skilled rehab, clients between 50 and 60 get in a huge car accident. And they were disabled after, and they could not go home. So they had to find
That's
assisted
tough.
living. You just don't know what's around the corner. So I say you can start at any age.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not the most exciting weekend trip
No.
touring, but yeah, no, it's just like planning for your estate and the will. It's kind of morbid,
It is.
especially when I look at younger families. They don't want to talk about it.
Of course not.
Oh no, I'm not. I'm not going to die for a long time.
Yep.
Okay, well that's great. Could you give me your date of death, and we'll go through it. But people don't want to talk about it because it's scary. It's emotional. It's not a very good thing to think about. But the way I look at it is, if you don't plan, you're scrambling at the last minute, and it's usually not a good scenario. You talk about it now. You plan. You get things down as far as you have an idea what you want to do, and then you move on.
Yes.
You don't come back to it.
Mm-hmm.
And you bring up a good point too, the car accident thing. I think of people. I think of another younger gentleman who's late 40s that had a stroke and not coming back. at this point. It's just still alive and breathing and going through a very emotional time right now with the family. And it's got to be nerve wracking. One day you're getting up in the morning, going to work just like normal.
Mhm.
And now you're in a hospital bed and maybe have brain damage or some other ailment where you're never coming home and you're never going to be that same person again. And then the family's got to adapt and adjust to that.
Yes.
It's got to be difficult.
And you could have a heart attack tomorrow. Anyone can.
Absolutely.
And we just don't prepare for things that we don't want to think about. So I was at a health fair one time and I just noticed a lot of people weren't coming to my booth because they don't want to think about the future and going to a community that they're going to need a community. So I tried to approach it a little differently. Like, I'm not saying you're going there tomorrow, but let's have a conversation about 20 years from now, 5 years from now. Let's talk about what I could help you with and take some pressure off. Because if you get the 48-hour phone call or even 24 hours, they got to go somewhere. I help set up the assessment for the community to come out and assess them. Sometimes they can tour if they want to. Some people are like, I don't care, just community. This is what I want. But you're in a panic mode. So I'm trying to help take that panic mode down by taking over some of that for them. But it is panicky when you don't know which way to turn.
I want to ask your opinion. Maybe you have the answer or maybe you don't. But do you notice any changes with the way that people think about care from generation to generation? Because I'll tell you, I'm firstborn here in this country, and I can tell you that my grandmother, and I think of even my great grandmother and family, they looked at it as, no, this is family. They're never leaving this home. We're going to care for them and do whatever. If we have to strap them to the chair to hold them up so that they're not going to fall,
Yep.
we're going to do it. And when I look at demographics of people at 50s and 40s and 30s, oh yeah, mom, we're going to get mom hooked up somewhere. We can't take care of her. It's not even an option.
Yep.
Do you see that trend happening too? And how are people, I guess, planning for it?
I actually notice like the baby boomers are a little more resistant going to a community.
I think so.
A lot of them associate if they went to rehab and skilled nursing, it's a nursing home. They're in for skilled nursing. And they think that's what assisted living is. And there are great skilled nursings and there's some that need a little help. So it depends how their experience was there. And some are more resistant to assisted living and memory care because they think it's going to be like that. And I try to explain it's completely different. I bring pictures in, I bring videos like to show them this is the difference. I do feel some of the younger generation are just they're like, nope, once mom and dad reach that stage, I don't know what to do. It's going to be too much for me. I have my family I have to worry about too. It would be better if we can just put them in a place and we go visit. Okay. And then the older generation, I think they do feel that they should stay home as long as possible.
Yeah, they're almost like compelled to, we got to do this. We can't give up. And it's not giving up. It's, it may be even better quality of care and life for both, not just one person.
Well, and it's also when you go to a community, the people that even work at that community, even the executive director, they become part of your family
Oh, I believe it.
because they're there. And I love some of my home care OT and PTs when they go to a community to work with a client. It's still their home. You're respecting their home, even though it's a 1-bedroom or a studio. It's their home. So it's not that it's not a home anymore. It's just a different
home.
Yeah, and I try to explain it that it's still your space and how you want it to be. It's actually a lot of times safer. There's no stairs. There's someone to help you. That I get a lot from family members and clients. They have local family members here, but they don't want to burden them. They feel like they're a burden. So they tend to rely on me more to help get things set up. And then I get the family members. They're like, my mother or dad, they're never a burden on me. It's just they feel differently about things. And the family wants to be involved, but they don't want to involve. The client doesn't want to involve them because they have their own families. If we all work as a team, it's an easier transition.
I'm just thinking about other aspects of like who's paying for care. And so do you and your firm, does your company offer additional services above and beyond that, or do you involve other team members? Like, how does it usually work with your clients that you're working with?
For as where funds could come from to help pay for some.
Yes.
So I have some resources with the VA, like aid in attendance is huge. Some people don't even know about that. Before I started this, I had no idea about aid in attendance, and my dad's a veteran, and you have to make so much a month. I know there's a threshold, but you have to serve 1 day in wartime, and then the VA will help pay for some aid in attendance.
Did not know that.
Someone to come in the home, or even if they go into a community, they'll help pay for some of the community. I mean, they're veterans. I think they should get everything.
Absolutely.
But also, the other one I get is the elder law attorneys. Do we have a healthcare proxy? Do we have a power of attorney? Is the house in a trust? Like, what can I do with my house? Who does it go to? Like, I get a lot of clients that are fighting over the money about mom and dad. Where it comes from. Like, do we have stocks and bonds? Do we have an IRA? Do we have a pension annuity? Even life insurance can be cashed out, but there's going to be a penalty.
Yes.
So I go over all the different options of where they have money and how it can be used. But otherwise, I have a lot of outside sources I will refer to.
Oh, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
So we know the process. We know how people how do people find you now? So if you're not they're not being referred to you, how can somebody find you? Just the website? Is that the best way, or?
Yeah, I'd say probably the website, and a lot of it is word of mouth.
Okay.
Yep. And I've had clients say, how can we ever pay you back and repay you for all the services?
Sure.
And I'm like, I just ask that you write a review on Google.
Oh, that's great.
That gets me out more to more people.
That's great.
Yep. That's all I ask. And
well,
I also want to know how people are doing.
Well, yeah. I mean, you have to, you forge a relationship when you work with somebody through a difficult time in life. It's rewarding. But I'm sure a little emotional too, even though you're separated from the family in a sense. But there is some, I notice that with our clients too. My clients know my family. Yeah. We know their family. It feels like an extension of your family, even in the office too. We work with so many people for an extended period of time through difficult parts of their life. Some exciting, yes. Some planning for retirement, which is great. Mm-hmm. Sometimes, unfortunately, we have a husband or wife pass on, or have a stroke or some kind of medical event that changes their life.
Yes.
But there's also a lot of rewarding things and exciting times in their life with kids and grandkids and weddings, and that's the fun part that really makes all this worth it.
Oh, it really does. And I mean, I get the same thing where I know one of my clients' granddaughter's pregnant. Like,
that's awesome.
They want to let me know the baby was born. And I also have a client right now that she's on hospice, and the family wanted to let me know she's on hospice.
That's tough. You know what? I would ask you in one final closing thought. How do you define success in what you do? What would you define as successful engagement with a client?
Yeah, I do get the clients where, I talk to them once, I give them the guidance, and they feel okay to do it on their own. That's fine. I just want to know that I made a positive impact and brought down their stress level and was able to walk them step by step. It's just easier when you have someone else to work with you as a team member. When I know I make a difference, that's how I know I'm successful.
That's great.
Yep.
I love it. Well, thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
Holly from Oasis Senior Advisors, Pennywise Financial Podcast. This is Constantine here. Thanks again for listening.
You've been listening to Pennywise Financial, brought to you by Monarch Wealth Management. Constantine and David really care about their clients. They want to make sure you're happy, so you'll continue to hire them. There's no commitments, and clients are free to leave whenever they want. Think about being able to pick up the phone and call someone for guidance and advice on almost anything, from buying a car, selling a home, buying vacation properties, or even selling a business. Reach out on the website at monarchwealthmanagement.com. There are 2 offices in Rochester and 2 offices in Buffalo. Reach out to us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube, or call us toll-free at 800-480-1580. That's 800-480-1580. Until next time, this is Pennywise Financial, signing off.
The opinions voiced in this program are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, and financial advisor or tax advisor prior to investing. Securities are offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA, and SIPC.